Hi team, welcome to the third installment of our Introduction to Canadian History Quebec series of printables and mini lessons. If you haven't already, make sure you watch the mini lessons number 1 and 2 in this series. Today, we turn to the topic of the settlement of Quebec, which is how Canada began to form into the country that it is today. As we talked about in lesson 2, after Columbus discovered America in 1492, John Cabot, also Giovanni Caboto, found more of it in 1497, and other European explorers followed. One of the countries that also sent explorers to America was France. One of them was Jacques Cartier, who first sailed to Quebec in 1534 and named the territory he found as Canada. The name seems to have come from a native name given to the area by the Iroquois tribe. Soon, that is what Europeans were calling it too. Not much was done about it at first, because there were no civilizations in America, and the Europeans really wanted to get to China, a large and organized country with lots of goods to be bought and sold. Canada, on the other hand, was a giant wilderness, with only scattered peoples who had yet to create a stable way of life. The main goal of Europeans for quite some time was to get around Canada, not to it. That was called the Search for Northern Passages. It was a search for a route to China over top of Canada. It was not successful because there was so much ice in the way, and eventually European kingdoms began to think of North America as a place where they could create colonies. A colony is a territory, which is a place that people from a country settle in order to bring it under the control of their mother country. That's what happened in 1608. A man named Samuel de Champlain arrived in Canada to create the settlement of Quebec. In lesson 1 of our story, we looked at the puzzle of modern multicultural Canada. How did it come to be a country with 2 languages and many cultures? Now we have part of the answer. Canada, where most people speak English, was started by the French. If you want to visit Quebec, I highly recommend it. It's a place where you can stay in an ice hotel in the winter. It's also the most European of all the cities in America because it's the oldest city in Canada. From there, the French moved up the St. Lawrence River to the Great Lakes. They continued past them to the rivers that feed into them from the south, and from there found their way to the Ohio River and the Mississippi, all the way down to the territory they called Louisiana. That American state is named after the French king Louis XIV, and there is a strange version of French spoken there, even in modern America. But the French were not the only people interested in all this land. While the French were taking over Quebec and starting to explore the rivers of North America on their canoes, the English were making their start in Jamestown, Virginia. Soon, there would be a set of competing colonies in which each wanted more land. You can tell where this is going. France and England were 2 countries that were always colliding in wars back in Europe, and now they would collide again in North America. Meanwhile, the French were getting what they could from Canada. The most important value they could get from it was the fur trade. The French did not send many people to America at first, so they had fewer disputes with the native peoples of Canada than the English did in Virginia and Massachusetts. They got along better with them and traded European goods for things like animal furs. We don't think much of that today. People don't like the idea of wearing fur anymore because it feels like a cruel thing to do to animals, now that we can make artificial clothing using technology. But this is just one of those stories we need to appreciate about earlier times, when modern technology simply did not exist. Even so, history was starting to speed up. Europe was getting organized into the Europe of nations, which we'll be talking about in our Quebec series on the history of Europe very soon. I highly recommend that you take a look at it in order to understand why France and England were always fighting. It's also a great way to prepare to join the live classes at Knowable World, which will feature European history done right in the 2025-26 school year. You can already find out about it on the Knowable World website. Come find us at knowableworld.com, where you can get the full European History Printables package and find out more. See you next time.